Matre Namaha. In one's life, it is an important characteristic called faith as well as worship. A person must possess faith first from his works. He has to faith on his activities, on him. Later, he has to have faith on others' works, others' activities, and on others. Why? Unless you place faith on your people, they never trust you. Similarly, as you sow, so shall you reap, isn't it? That's why we should take care of placing the faith on each and everybody who surrounds us. It is the source of one's leading blissful life. Even if you do the work, you should have 100% faith that will complete positively. You should not go on negative at any cost. Positive attitude can be developed through the way of faith, through placing faith on your work. Whatever the work, it may be studies, it may be earning money, it may be taking challenge of any tasks, whatever it may be. But there should need of faith in this regard. So we have to adopt the quality of faith in all activities, starting from us, ending to others. At the same time, another quality is called worship. Worship means not worshipping with flowers like a puja, etc. Worship means give respect. It is a lack nowadays. If any elderly person comes to the house, first of all, it is our duty to stand up and greet them. That is called worship. Not going to put harati and showering flowers, etc. Giving respect is called worship. Even your work, you have to worship. That's why it is say, work is worship. Whatever the work you do, there should be worshipping attitude. You should have to worship your works. Then only it worships you. Every action has its own reaction, no? Unless you have the nature of worship, how can you suggest to others? For our ancestors taught this kind of faith and worship to us. But nowadays generation is not interested in this. At the same time, parents like us are not teaching them the values of faith and worship. Where it goes? That's why if you see in the houses, if any elderly person comes, they simply sit, putting legs on another leg. They don't stand. If they see it, they say hi. That's all. This culture is going down day by day. It should be encouraged from childhood itself. All the parents must give importance like these of minimum characteristics to the children. They should not be lazy to teach them these kind of things which will reflect on us when we are in old age. Is it? At the same time, they will get lot of blessings from elderly people to get fruits in their life. Why people taught to us in ancient days? Because the blessings of elder people will make our life fruitful. So there are so many types of worship is there. How to worship, what are the sources of worship, what is faith, how to emphasize on faith, what are the ways to implement faith in works. So this and all should be analyzed. So basing on these Today I took the topic of faith and worship. So let us go before that prayer. Vagartha viva sampruptau Vagartha pratipattaye Jagatah pitarau vande Parvati Parameshwarau. Faith in the unseen, the unknown, the words of the elders, and its ability to adjust to community without ruffling everyone's feathers, that matures the soul to the next pada moral, wherein faith becomes faith in one's self. Close friends and associates, faith in one's intellectual remembrance of the opinions of others, even if they are wrong. It is not very quickly that soul gets out of the syndrome, because it is here that the karmas are made that bind the soul, surround the soul, the karmas of ignorance which must be gone through for the wisdom to emerge. Someone who is wise got that way by facing up to all the increments of ignorance which must be gone through for the wisdom to emerge. Someone who is wise got that way by facing up to the all increments of ignorance is common phenomena. The Marul Pada is very binding and tenaciously binding. But as the external shell of Vishwa is being built, the soul exercises itself in its own endeavor to break through. A still small voice falls on deaf ears. Yoga brings the soul into its next experimental pattern. The soul comes to find that if he performs good and virtuous deeds, life always seems to take a positive turn. Whereas in negative, unvirtuous acts, he slowly becomes lost in a foreboding abyss of confusion. Thus, in faith, he turns toward the good and holy. A balance emerges in one's life, whether he is conscious or not. He is bringing the three malas, Vishwa, Karma, and Maya, under control. Maya is less and less an enchanting temptress. Let us keep faith in our tradition. The intellect in its capacity to contain truth is very limited tool, while faith is very broad, accommodating and embracing faculty. The mystery of life and beyond life is really better understood through faith than through an intellectual reasoning. The intellect is a memory or reason conglomerate from the lower nadi or chakra complex. Its refined ability to juggle information around in uncanny in some instances. Nevertheless, the intellect is built upon what we hear and remember what we experience and remember what we explain to others who are refined or gross in reasoning faculties. What we remember of it all and the portions that have been forgotten may be greatly beneficial to those listening, or it may be confusing, but it is certainly not truth with a capital T. There are two kinds of faith. The first kind is faith in those masters, adepts, yogis, and rishis who have had similar experiences and have spoken about them in similar ways, unedited by the ignorant. We, therefore, can have faith that some truth was revealed from within themselves, from some deep, inner, or higher source. The second aspect of faith is in one's own spiritual, unsought for unbidden flashes of intuition. Revelations are visions which one remembers even stronger as the months go by, more vividly than something read from a book, seen, or television, or heard from a friend or a philosopher. These personal revelations create a new, superconscious intellect when verified by what yogis and rishis and the sadhus have seen and heard, and whose explanations centuries have preserved. Now, faith and worship. It is difficult and nearly impossible for those in the stage of confusion to have faith in the process of spiritual unfoldment and trust in tradition because they are developing their personal ego, manufacturing karmas, good, bad, and mixed, to sustain their physical existence for hundreds of lives. They will listen to sermons with a deaf ear, and after they are over, enjoy the food and the idle chatter the most. They will read books on philosophy and rationalize their teachings as relevant only to the past. The great knowledge of the past tradition, even the wisdom their grandparents might hold, is an encroachment on their proud sovereignty. It is only when the soul reaches the maturity to enter the lotus feet, the stage of grace, that the ability will come from within to learn on the past and on tradition, perform the present sadhanas, live within dharma, and carve a future for themselves and others by bringing the best of the past, which is a tradition, forward into the future. This transition is a happy one. Truth now has a capital T and is always told. The yamas, truly have been perfected and are a vital part of the DNA system of individual living beings. Now, as he enters the lotus feet, the niyamas, the spiritual practices, stand out strongly in his mind. Thus, for Hindus, faith means believing in what is. Astikya refers to one who believes in what is, one who is pious and faithful. We can see that these two words, faith and astikya, mean worship, are similar in nature. Faith is spiritual, intellectual mind, developed through many superconscious insights blended together through cognition, not through reason. The insights do not have to be remembered because they are firmly impressed as samskaras within the inner mind. There is an old saying favored by practical, experimental intellectuals: seeing is believing. A more profound adage is believing is seeing. The scientists and the educators of today live in the lotus feet. They see with their two eyes and pass judgments based on what they currently believe. The rishis of the past, rishis of the present, those yet to come in the future also are seers. There is a thin thread through the history of China, Japan, India, England, and all of Europe, Africa, the Americas, Polynesia, and all the other countries of the world, connecting seers and what they have seen. This seeing is not with the two eyes, it is with the third eye, the eye of the soul. one cannot erase through argument or coercion that which has been seen. The seer relates his seeing to the soul of the one who hears. This is Sampradaya. This is Guru Sishya transference. This is the truth. This is the Shuddha. This is the end of this Upadesha. Ishvara Pujanam means worship of the Lord. Worship means Ishvara Pujana is the fifth niyama. Let us declare in the last analysis that human life is either worship or worship, higher nature or lower nature. We need say no more, but we will. The brief explanation for Ishvara Pujana is to cultivate devotion through daily worship and meditation. The soul's evolution from its conception is based solely on Ishvara Pujana, the return to the source. In the lotus feet, the stage of darkness, its return to the source is more imminent than actual. The burning desire is there, driven by the instructive feelings and emotions of living within the seven chakras below the Mooladhara. There is a natural seeking on the way up. People here will worship almost anything to get out of this predicament. Bound in blind faith with the absence of a matured intellect developed by superconscious experience, they struggle out of their shell of ignorance through worship to a better life. The small thread of intuition keeps assuring them it is true, within their reach, if they but strive. They call God, they fear God, seek to be close to Him, and see Him as oh so far away. When they are matured and stepping into adolescence in the lotus feet, where confusion prevails, worship and the trappings and traditions that go with it seem to be primitive, unreasonable, and can all well be dispensed with. It is here that a young lady looks into a mirror and says, "What a fine person! I am more beautiful than all the other girls I know." Young man may likewise be conceited about his looks or physique. Worship still exists, but is tied closely to narcissism. It is only in the stage of grace and on its doorstep that true worship arises, which is invoking and opening up to the great beings, God, gods, and devas, in order to commune with them. Faith, astikya, creates the attitude for the action of worship. We can see that from the soul's conception to its fullness of maturity into the final merger with God Shiva Himself. Worship, communication, looking up, blending with is truly monastic Shaiva Siddhanta, the final conclusions for all mankind. We can conclude that in Sanatana Dharma, faith is in what is, and in the Abrahamic religions, faith in what is yet to be worshipped could be defined as a communication on a very high level, a truly sophisticated form of channeling, as New Age people might say, clairaudient experience, as mystics would describe it, or heartfelt love interchanged between deity and devotees, as the ordinary person would describe it. Worship for the Hindu is on many levels and of many kinds. In the home, children worship for the Hindu is on many levels and of many kinds. In the home, children worship their father and mother as God and Goddess because they love them. The husband worships his wife as goddess. The wife worships husband as a god. In the shrine room, the entire family together worships images of gods, goddesses, and saints, beseeching them as their dear friends. The family goes to the temple daily, or at least once a week, attends seasonal festivals, and takes a far off pilgrimage once a year. Worship is a binding force that keeps the Hindu family together. On a deeper level, external worship is internalized, worshipping God within though meditation and contemplation. This form of worship leads into yoga and profound mystical experience. Let us know rites of worship. Rites mean RITES, not RIGHT. Many people are afraid to do puja, specific traditional rites of worship, because they feel they don't have enough training or don't understand the mystical principles behind it well enough. To this concern, I would say that the priesthood in Hinduism is sincere, devout, and dedicated. Most Hindus depend on the priest to perform the pujas and sacraments for them, or to train them to perform home puja, and they give them permission to do so through invitation called Diksha. However, simple pujas may be performed by anyone worshipping to invoke grace from God. Mahadevas and Devas. Love and dedication and outpouring from the highest chakras of spiritual energies of the lay devotees are often greater than any professional priest could summon within himself. Devotees of this caliber have come up in Hindu society throughout the ages with natural powers to invoke the gods and manifest in their lives of temple devotees many wondrous miracles. There is also an informal order of priests called Pandara, which is essentially the self appointed priest who is accepted by the community to perform pujas at sacred tree, a simple shrine, or an abandoned temple. He may start with the mantra Om and learn a few more mantras as he goes along. His efficaciousness can equal that of the most advanced Sanskrit Shastri performing in the grandest temple. Mothers, daughters, aunts, uncles, fathers, sons all may perform puja within their own home and do, as the Hindu home is considered to be nothing less than an extension of the nearby temple. In the Hindu religion, unlike Western religions, there is no one who stands between man and God. In the late 1950s, elders taught beginning seekers how to offer the minimal, simplest form of puja at a simple altar with fresh water, flowers, a small candle, incense, a bell, and a stone. This brings together the four elements earth, air, fire, and water. And your own mind is Akasha, the fifth element. The liturgy is simply chanting Om. This is the generic puja which anyone can do before proper initiation comes from the right sources. People of any religion can perform Hindu puja in this way. All Hindus have guardian devas who live on the astral plane and guide, guard, and protect their lives. The great Mahadevas in the temple that the devotees frequent send their Deva ambassadors into the homes to live with the devotees. A room is set aside for these permanent unseen guests. A room that the whole family can enter and sit in and commence inwardly with these refined beings who are dedicated to protecting the family generation after generation. Some of them are their own ancestors. A token shrine in a bedroom or a closet or a niche in a kitchen is not enough to attract these divinities. One would not host an honored guest in one's closet or have him or her sleep in the kitchen and expect the guest in one's closet or have him or her sleep in the kitchen and expect the guest to feel welcome, appreciated, loved. All Hindus are taught from childhood that the guest is God, Atidhi Devo Bhava, and they treat any guest royally who comes to visit. Hindus who also treat God as God and Devas as gods when they come to live permanently in the home. But liberal sects of Hinduism teach that God and Devas are only figments of one's imagination. These sects are responsible for producing a more materialistic and superficial group of followers. Not so the deep, mystic Hindu who dedicates his home to God and sets a room aside for God. To him and the family, they are moving into God's house and living with God. Materialistic, superficial Hindus feel that God might be living sometimes, maybe in their house. Their homes are fraught with confusion, deceptive dealings, backbiting, anger, even rage, and their marriages nowadays often end in divorce. They and all those who live in the lower nature are restricted from performing puja because when and if they do puja, the invocation calls up the demons rather than calling down the devas. The Asuric beings invoked into the home by angry people and into the temple by angry priests, into the or by contentious or argumentative, sometimes rogueful boards of directors take great satisfaction in creating more confusion and escalating simple misunderstandings into arguments leading to angry words, hurt feelings, and more. With this in mind, once anger is experienced, 31 days should pass to close the door on the chakras below the Mooladhara before puja may again be performed by that individual. Simple waving of inquiries before the icons is permissible, but not the passing of flames, ringing of bells, or chanting of any mantra other than the simple recitation of Om. Living in God's home. The ideal of Ishvara Pujana, worship is always be living with Jiva in God's house, which is also your house, and regularly going to God's temple. This lays the foundation for finding God within. How can someone find God within if he does not live in God's house as a companion to God in his daily life? The answer is obvious. It would only be a theoretical pretense based mainly on egoism. If one really believes that God is in his house, what kinds of attitudes does he create? First of all, since family life is based around food, the family would feed God in his own room at least 3 times a day, place the food lovingly before his picture, leave, close the door, and let God and his devas eat in peace. God and devas do enjoy the food, but they do so by absorbing the pranas, the energies of the food. When the meal is over and after the family has eaten, God's plates are picked up too. The practice of Ishvara Puja sadhana can be performed all through the day and even in one's dreams at night. Meditation too in the Hindu way is based on worship. It is true that Hindus do teach meditation techniques to those who have Western backgrounds as a mind manipulative experience. However, a Hindu adept, Rishi or Jnani, even an experienced elder, knows that meditation is a natural outgrowth of the Charya, Kriya, and Yoga paths. It is based on a religious foundation as trigonometry, algebra, and arithmetic. If you are worshipping properly, if you take worship to its pinnacle, you are in perfect meditation. We have seen many devotees going through the form of worship with no communication with God. They are worshipping, or even the stone that God uses as a temporary body. They don't even have a smile on their face. They are going through the motions because they have been taught that meditation is ultimate and worship can be dispensed with after a certain time. These are the Saiva Siddhanta conclusions of seven rishis who live within the Sahasrara chakra of all souls. श्रीकांताय कल्याण निधे निधे द्राम श्री वेंकट निवासाय श्रीनिवासाय मंगलम मंगलाशासन प्रमदाचार्य प्रोगमैः सर्वैश्च पूर्वैराचार्य सत्कृतायास्तु मंगलम्.